Good day, seniors. Today we will tackle part 2 of cartoon studies. My name is Mrs. Daisel, and in this tutorial video I'm going to teach you some of the different techniques cartoon artists use to create humor. I will show you examples of these techniques and we will analyze them together. But before you watch this tutorial video, you should check out part 1 of cartoon studies, since the knowledge and analysis have a chronological order. The next videos in this series, part 3 and 4, will conclude our series. Today, we will focus on the different techniques that create humor, namely caricature and irony. There are 3 different types of irony: situational, verbal, and dramatic irony. Many of you have struggled to identify and explain irony in comprehension texts as well as in cartoons. Today I will show you that it is not as difficult or confusing as you think. Right then, let's get started. In order to get a full view of the entire series of cartoon studies, let's have a look at the aspects I'm covering. We have already dealt with the first 3 components, namely, what is a cartoon, how to identify the subject of the cartoon, as well as the visual literacy techniques like facial expression, body language, speech bubbles, and setting. We have also touched on the cartoonist point of view in part 1, but we will discuss it in more detail later on. So, be on the lookout for the next videos in the series once you've worked through this tutorial video. I know from experience that my learners have struggled with spotting and understanding humor in cartoons. I have often heard the frustrated cries of, "But ma'am, it isn't funny," or "I just don't get it, ma'am." You're an extremely visual generation, and you like to get information in quick snippets like TikTok. Analyzing how cartoons are put together requires patience on your part and a good understanding of figurative interpretation. But don't worry, I will teach you how to come to grips with figurative humor. So on to business. This slide gives you a quick visual overview of the different techniques used to create humor. They are caricature, irony, puns, ambiguity, anticlimax, and satire. I'm sure some of you are already familiar with quite a few of these concepts, but I'm going to start at the beginning so as to leave no one behind. In this video, we will cover caricature and the different types of irony. Let's begin. Poor Jacob Zuma has been the target of many a cartoonist, perhaps because he makes it so easy for them. A caricature makes fun of a well-known persona. It doesn't have to be politicians only. Celebrities are often mocked by cartoonists' harsh caricature. A caricature can only be successful if the audience knows the person and can recognize the person, even though his or her features have been exaggerated to the point that the flaws are almost the most noticeable features. The reason it is funny will depend from celebrity to celebrity, because they have different personality and characteristics that the cartoonist wants to point out. In the caricature of Jacob Zuma, his oddly shaped head, which is so recognizable to the audience, has been exaggerated to make him look ridiculous. This is the first thing that makes us chuckle. Notice also how bored he looks when you focus on his eyes and mouth. This is also funny because it is how Jacob Zuma appears in Parliament, in court, and on television interviews. That is, when he's not dancing on the courthouse steps and singing Mshiniwam. To make matters even funnier is the fact that he has been drawn in a prison uniform and in front of a police liner background. Now, to look bored when you've just been arrested is weird, but the audience also knows that Jacob Zuma is never fazed by anything. His attitude is always, bring it on. In addition, look at the slanted eyes. Their shape has been exaggerated to make Jacob Zuma look not only like an outer space alien, but also like a person who should not be trusted. His eyebrows are raised in the typical manner, as if to ask, so what? In fact, that he's in prison should answer the so what question. But we know that is just how he rolls. Now you try. Answer the questions I've listed by yourself. Hint: the answer to the first question should be easy. It's Kim Kardashian. The answer to the last question, why is it funny, is usually because it's true. Being shown other people's flaws and weaknesses usually makes us laugh, especially when it's a famous person. Remember, these two examples of caricature is important when we discuss satire. I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist. I'm sure you can work out the cartoonist's opinion by yourself. Enjoy. Now on to irony. Irony is an often used technique in cartoons. Now sometimes learners find it difficult to spot irony, but once you understand the definition and the different types of irony, it really should become a lot easier. Irony is always when the opposite of what we expect happens. Now we always have some idea of how things should be in any given situation. When the opposite of our expectation happens, it is ironic. I'll give you an example. My butcher is a vegetarian. Now that should at least get a smile out of you, right? A butcher chops up and sells meat. Therefore, the last thing we would expect him to be is a vegetarian. Our expectations have been overthrown because of irony. Please read the definitions of the different types of irony on this slide carefully before you move on to the next slide. So this is another example of situational irony. The situation creates a certain idea or expectation, but then the opposite happens. This cartoon is funny because we know that a tortoise is very slow. Yet, in the second frame, he claims he got a speeding ticket. His smug and satisfied facial expression and the fact that he had the speeding ticket framed tells us that he's very proud of this unlikely achievement. Cartoon humor may not be having you rolling in the aisles with laughter, but a smile or a smirk will do. The important thing is to be able to understand what technique the cartoonist has used to create the humor. In the exam, you can be guaranteed a question on the humor in the cartoon. So roll up your sleeves. We have a lot more to get through. We can all recognize sarcasm. Mothers and teachers speak it fluently. Verbal irony happens when what you say is the exact opposite of what you really mean. We often need non-verbal clues to know when someone is being verbally ironic or sarcastic. A person's tone of voice, facial expression, and body language are the clues we mostly rely on. Look at the mother's body language and facial expression in the cartoon. Her hands are on her hips, which indicates that she's angry or dissatisfied. She's not smiling either when congratulating her son on his beautiful room. The context or situation is also a dead giveaway. In the cartoon, the boy's room looks like a pigsty, yet the mom claims she's very proud of him because his room is super neat. Let's recap before we move on to dramatic irony. In situational irony, the opposite of what we expect happens. In verbal irony, the opposite of what is said is actually meant. Dramatic irony has only one component that separates it from verbal and situational irony, And that is the fact that we, the audience, know something that the character does not. Or more specifically, we know that what the character thinks is going on is the opposite of what is really going on. So now look at the cartoon on this slide. The child has her mouth wide open, hoping to catch snowflakes on her tongue. However, we can see that the pigeons are planning to poop in his mouth. So, instead of catching snowflakes on his tongue, we know he will be catching bird droppings on his tongue instead. It is funny because we know something the character does not know, and we savor the moment when this event happens and the boy's reaction when he gets the opposite, something nasty, from what he expected, something soft and pure. Now it's your turn to apply your knowledge. Study this cartoon carefully, read the questions, and answer these questions in your workbook. It's your turn again. Study the cartoon and then figure out how what the fish are thinking is the opposite of what the cat is actually doing. Answer it in your workbooks. I know you can do this. That concludes part 2 on cartoon studies. Next time, we will cover part 3, in which I will teach you the remaining techniques which create humor. Part 4 is the final installment in the series. In this last video, I will teach you the following concepts: the cartoonist's point of view, the message of the cartoon, as well as the purpose of a cartoon. Don't miss out on part 3 and 4, because you will be asked to answer questions on these concepts in your exams. Then of course also be on the lookout for the do-it-yourself booklet on cartoons, where you will work through past exam questions on cartoons. I will then also provide you with a memo and guide you through the correct way to answer the questions. In this way, we will be certain to cement your skills until you can answer any question an examiner throws at you. This is Mrs. Stasel. Until next time, signing off.